One thing that I feel makes a big difference in my work, and I guess you could call this a reference, would be all the people that I see on the subway every day. You know, living here in New York, especially here in Queens, I get the privilege to see so many different types of people every day, and it's really an amazing thing. So the neighborhood just to the southeast of us is the neighborhood of Sunnyside, which as of a couple of years ago, I'm not sure if this is true anymore, but it was the most diverse neighborhood on the entire planet. So just riding the train here in Queens, I get to see so many different types of people. I'm always the creepy person on the train that'll be staring at you and weird you out, and you know, I really don't mean it. I just get, you know, fascinated by, like, you know, the shape of someone's skull, and you know how how those different forms come together, and you know what form may supersede another on one person's face, where it's more recessive on another one. And it's really just an awesome privilege to be able to to be here and to be around people all the time. My work is about humanity, and I'm trying to appeal to just basic emotions. It's about my own trials and the difficulties that I have in my relationship with my wife, and trying to figure out what my role is in this world, and how to justify things that I do, and just trying to come to terms with what it means to be a 32-year-old man living in 2017. So what I do is I try to strip away as much context as I can from my sculptures, and just create a figure that's as timeless as possible. I feel that the strength of sculpture is that it can last forever. We're here in the 21st century, and people are still looking at figurative sculpture from over 2,000 years ago, from 3,000 years ago, and like tens of thousands of years ago. And these depictions of the human form are something that are just so powerful to us. We've evolved as beings that are meant to see other figures, like seeing a face in the clouds or in tree bark. It's something that all of us do all of the time. So I feel that making figurative artwork is the most effective way to have a conversation with the most amount of people. Yeah, I actually have a little bit of a speech impediment. I stutter a little bit. It's gratefully it's not so bad. I just feel like I'm really lucky to be able to express and communicate all of my feelings and ideas through this, through this very visual method, where I usually don't have to worry about talking. I can be here in my studio, and I can just think about my place in the world, and whether or not I'm really living up to my ideas of what it means to be a good person. Hi, my name's Brett F. Harvey. I'm a sculptor from Astoria, a neighborhood in Queens in New York City. I live in a one-bedroom apartment with my wife, who's also an artist, Lauren Amalia Redding. And we share a one-bedroom apartment and we are both artists making work in this same small space. So I'd just like to share with everyone how we have figured out how to survive as artists, and how to keep on making work even in a crazy crowded city like this one. So what we did was we took a one-bedroom apartment. We're probably around 350 square feet. We built a Murphy bed in our living room, and we turned this bedroom into a sculpture studio. It's challenging at times, but I just want to show everybody that where there's a will, there's a way, and it's totally possible to continue making artwork, even sculpture, in a small space with a little bit of effort and creativity. I have to say I'm really lucky to have a wife, a partner who is also an artist and is willing to make the same sorts of sacrifices as I am in order to create an environment where we can both continue making work. This isn't necessarily the easiest place to live, and living with an artist isn't always the easiest thing, and I'm really lucky that she puts up with me and allows me to have this space. So one of the challenges of making work like this in a small space is that you need lots of tools and materials. First I make the sculpture out of clay, so I need hundreds of pounds of clay to be able to build the sculpture. Then I need maybe 100, 200 pounds of plaster to be able to make the mold. And then I need another type of plaster, or the concrete that I use to make the casting. Oftentimes I make a rubber mold after my initial casting so that I can reproduce the sculpture and make an addition of 3, or if I want to get a different effect from the material that I'm casting in. All of those different processes require their own tools and materials. So being here in this small room that's only about 140 square feet, it's not necessarily an easy job all the time, but I feel like it's definitely worth the sacrifice to be here in the city.
That's it?
So one of my favorite things that I've put together to help make life easy in this small studio is I've turned a hydraulic transmission jack into my modeling stand. One of the most important things that you need is a convenient way to work, how to be able to get around your piece easily. In a small space like this, you can't walk all the way around your sculpture to view it from different angles. So this spins, and the most important part is you can easily change your perspective by using the foot pump and raising and lowering the sculpture. So this transmission jack reaches up to, I think, 6 feet tall. So I could very easily lift the piece up, and I could view it from below. If say we're going to go on a high pedestal. I think everyone has probably heard the story about Michelangelo and when he sculpted the David, that he first presented the David and it was rejected, and so he was told to make these changes. So he, brought the sculpture back, and he ended up really not making any changes. He just, the next time he presented the sculpture, he put the sculpture on a pedestal. So, your own perspective and how you view the piece is extremely important. So, just being able to easily and quickly move your piece up and down, really helps you, make sense of what you're doing, and ensures that you can make educated decisions about your own work. So I'm gonna bring this back down. Let's see. Okay. Before I moved to New York for graduate school, I worked as a museum preparator. And in that job, one thing that I learned was that lighting is tremendously important to how people view artwork. I would venture a guess that lighting is worth maybe 75% of the value of the installation. And, particularly with sculpture, sculpture is a three-dimensional object, and the way the light is cast over the object makes a very big difference in how you view and perceive the piece. So, as I tried to figure out how to make this small little studio work, obviously I have the natural light coming in from the windows behind me, which, I'm very lucky, produces a nice, even light throughout the majority of the day. It does get dark, and you have to think about how you're gonna, keep on working when, you've had to, go and work, a day job all day. Your only time to work is in the evening. So I did some research, and I was able to find a light fixture at the nearest big box store that very closely replicates kind of a diffuse skylight, which is, ideally what I would like to be working under. So this LED fixture is a 2-foot square. I don't know how the bulbs are arranged in there, but it has this beautiful diffuse panel, and it's just a nice even stream of light that comes down over my workpiece. So I'm able to, work underneath this light, and this ends up being my, primary working area. I try to keep this wall behind the piece nice and even, and I try to, position my work underneath this fixture, and I'm able to rotate the piece around and, see it in every angle. And then I also have the added benefit of having, two distinctly different types of light on the piece at different times in the day. So if I'm working on something in the daylight, there may be an issue that I miss that is, revealed by this overhead light that comes down and illuminates the piece in a different way. Another thing that I've started to do to be able to work efficiently in a small space is, rather than making a lot of maquettes out of clay, which take up a lot of space, and you need shelf space to be able to to store all of those and reference them. I've discovered that I can use a 3D modeling program on the computer. I can make these very basic maquettes with a 3D modeling software called Rhinoceros, or Rhino for short. And I'm able to define my compositions by moving around these very, blocky geometric figures. I had always been a fan of preparatory drawings by the Renaissance artist Luca Cambiaso, who made these drawings of basically block men to figure out, how he was going to arrange all the figures within, a complex composition. And, he would have the boxes, shaded and shadowed. And I find that I can make a similar sort of figure on the computer, and then I can turn the model around and see it from all angles. And that helps me work out my basic ideas about the composition. And it still leaves the figure completely open. So I can still have the discovery of all of the problem solving that goes along with figuring out the anatomy and how I want to structure the figure when I'm actually making it in clay. I find that if I make my maquettes too finished, that I lose that sense of spontaneity and problem solving in the sculpture. So if I spend too much time working on a maquette, I end up solving too many of the problems, and then I end up not having the energy to actually finish the sculpture, because I've already solved the problems that I wanted to figure out, and it just becomes a whole lot of work to finish the sculpture. Thank you guys for spending some time with me in my studio. I hope to hear from you guys all soon. Thank you.